Oh, yeah. Let me tell you guys this is a good one. Not the same one. Don't worry, it's as intense for me. The need to do it just. I have to wait for. Let me introduce myself. Where is the introduction? Formalities. Hi, my name is James. I'm gonna be the chair of this round. I'm gonna let my panelists introduce themselves.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lita, but you can refer to me as Achocho. No preferred gender pronouns because we're physical. But there's no lack in here.
All right.
Anything associated in male will do for me.
All right. Please address the panel as a whole. You know, as a whole. I'm saying just say panel. You know, yeah. I mean, you can say chair. Don't say like that. Like, I mean, this is a fun round. So we're gonna see who's pro. All right. Introduce yourselves.
My name is Jibril.
Okay.
Naila, Mbarak.
Okay.
Nimusiima, Tracy.
All right. Up one.
Yeah.
All right.
Jonard.
Okay.
Peter.
All right. There will be no POI preferences. So generally speaking, physical. All right. Let me just get the motion. Oh no. Up three. Read for me the motion.
This house, as an immigrant parent, would raise their child exclusively in their own minority language.
Group one. That's the motion you have.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, let's make this a good fair debate. Don't badger one another. Knowing the fact that we are recording, please try to speak at a high tone. Let's reduce the chit chat as someone is speaking because we're streaming it and we need your beautiful voices to be high. So, you have two pens. No, you didn't. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna take the sneaker squad. Do you have two pens? Who has two pens? Yes, this Jonard over there. Let me just check where from.
TJ, you have any questions?
Oh, go to the side. Anyways, as I was saying, be respectful with the POIs, not attack one another, reduce the chit chat, offer POIs, and let's have a wonderful debate. All right. Prop one whenever you're ready.
I'll be teaching my people outside 50 minutes. In my thinking, 3, 2, 1. And we carry history with us, and it is so much important and vital to our lives, for it defines who we are. This happens in a scenario whereby chaos happens in society in different settings. We see countries like Rwanda where chaos existed in the days when people could not find peace, that they couldn't stay in society. People were therefore forced to come, and there my parents came, decided to join a society that was open. That is Uganda. People were brought in, and in a setting of a society that was really open, welcoming. Though people existed with many differences, but at least they acknowledged, and all of them were ready to understand each other, acknowledging other people's differences as they want to coexist in society. They existed and harmoniously had to live. Society made of different people, different settings, different languages, but they knew and understood the relevancy of them, for they had a history with them, carried a language with them that was so much vital and important, and they had to do the same to us to bring us up. In my speech, I'll show you why parents are so much important in the raising of a child. Second, I will show you what raising a child looks like in this case scenario. Then third, I will show you the relevancy of language in a setting. To start with, the parents, what they look like in this scenario, we are talking about a parent who is an immigrant. Yes, they migrated to our society, but regardless of the immigration, they carried a history with them. They understand the language they have with them. They have the cultural values that they believe in and carry with them. And they are so much vital and important. See the role they play in bringing up a child. They spend the time that is so much important when a child is coming up, the parents are close to them. So they should take this responsibility to teach them the language, as they have the better piece of it, for the kids can get to understand it in a better setting. This is what it looks like. Society, you exist in a society having many people of different settings, but when you are from a family that had a parent with their history, they taught you something, right? They taught you a language, teaching you that language in the small time they spent with you. Because team opposition might stand and say, why don't you think these people should acknowledge the other languages they've been in? We are not saying these kids are limited from learning other languages, but in the raising, the time that these people spend with their children, the time that is so much important is the time that they should lay the foundation. They should lay that foundation in their children so that they understand their language and they will get to cope up with the culture and get to understand how best to live. Because living in a society that has been ready to take you up and bring you in does not, at the end of the day, change the fact of who you are. You still exist as a person that you are initially meant to be. Panel C. We need to give you a description of what language is and its relevancy. Panel, you exist in a world where you have a family. Language being something that can give you a better world, in a way that it brings you closer to your people, it brings you closer to your family. See a scenario where I am maybe a Ssekandi and maybe I'm meant to be a Muganda. My parents are all Baganda, but simply because maybe they went to a society that does not have, that has many languages, and they decided to consider other languages more important over my language. See a scenario on a future perspective when I go back and I join fellow people, fellow Baganda who will see me in a line of being a Muganda, and hilariously, oh, what would sound weird when I do not know the language? Do you know such a situation, what it looks like? It really looks like a situation you're in, you're with your people, but you do not entirely understand you. It is vital that language makes you to know who you are, and it positions you to have a better stand on a future perspective. Because entirely, if you move to a society and understand the languages that exist, but more vital, we need to understand why we are considering our mother language or the minority language over these languages. These kids, you spend time with them. At times they go to school. They are open to learning other languages. But the holiday you have them, the small time you have them, is when you have to take up the responsibility to bridge that gap, that exists between you and your children. Some of the parents have actually embraced it, that when we are in holidays, the parent says, no, when you're at school, you speak many languages, but now I'm going to acknowledge the fact that you're here. Let me teach you your language, because it will help you to understand who you really are.
Is language the basic foundation of culture?
Language, basic foundation of culture. See what culture looks like. It depends on the perspective that you really want to view it. See, Pam, when you are seeing culture and everything that is attached to it, you cannot tell me that language is not vital. It is really much important. We see the people who have been in the UK singing the anthem of Uganda Kingdom. They are Uganda. But since they are embracing the culture and language is attached to it, that entirely plays a big role. That language is so much vital. In this case, scenario, keep your people eyes. Let me fast progress with this. Panel, when you're to see this, watch, because they might get a confusion on what raising a child looks like. I told you in the beginning that the time you have your child, so these children are open to learning other languages, but that small time you spend with them, it is you to lay that foundation, as it is so much vital. First of all, a question that might also stand is, who is the better player, or who plays the better role in imparting some language in a child? The answer is a parent in this scenario, because you're existing with many factors that possibly, if you do not focus on your child and teach them what is so much important, there is a possibility of them not carrying it with them, and that is so much dangerous. Why is it dangerous? See a scenario, we told you this is an immigrant. It does not guarantee that entirely they are supposed to spend all their entire life in that society. On the possibility of switching back to their normal setting or their families, these people need to connect with family. They need to connect with their other relatives. And it feels peaceful when these people have understood and they know the language they carry with them, because it will bring up the better setup and the better interplay of how people exist in society. So, my second speaker will actually come and progress with our speech, and she will show you how much it is so much important and vital in this case as an immigrant parent to raise your child exclusively in the minority language.
Thank you for that speech. First, let's have this first opposition speaker to bring up their case here.
So yeah, whenever you find it taking, you can always raise it. Get started right now.
this house has an migrant parents.
Like, could you like take off the jacket so that like everyone is someone hold this shot. I'm going to do it. It's your choice. You need to make it a bit. Yeah. Wow. Whatever it is.
I guess that's that. This house has a migrant parent who raise their child exclusively in their own minority language. So we live in a world where more than 6,000 languages are spoken, right? And for the active nature of this resolution, we think we shall dwell most in the basic interest of the parent, perhaps who is the actor. A key aspect we think has not actually surfaced from the framing of the opposition case, because we do not underscore the importance of language and culture in this debate. We actually understand and identify that culture and language are actually very important in society. But then we need to examine clearly what the basic interest of the parent is, A, and B, what this will impact to the child, right? So we think a number of issues have been raised from the opposition case. First, they tell us that they have this sort of agree to disagree ideology, that people can move on with different ideologies, people speaking different languages, people believing in different cultures, but staying together in a place and coexisting peacefully, right? But then the same thing, goes ahead to tell us that it is a group of people can shift from one place to another in the same region or in the same country and not fit in, like what the first speaker. So we think from the very first principles that is a contradiction, because if you front the idea of agree to disagree, then you again say that these people will not fit in as a matter of fact that they move from place A to B, then you're actually not making a point. Then second, they tell us that they are going to do two things. One, they're going to tell us the importance of a parent and perhaps looking at a parent who is an immigrant, and then B, they're going to tell us about the concept of raising. But it is a disappointment that they only tell us that the concept of raising entails the time a parent spends with their child. We think the concept of raising goes much further than that. The concept of raising deals with things like advising, encouraging, guiding, and discouraging children on what to do. In other words, a parent will say, I want my child to do this, like do's and don'ts. And then we also think this debate is going to be based on an idea that the well-being of a child is in the best interest of a parent. Thinking that again, the well-being of the child is in the best interest of a parent. In other words, we are going to dwell on the idea that the parent only wishes what is best for their children, and that we shall also discuss the utility principles to go then identify whether or not which side brings out the best outcomes. So we think, as a matter of fact, that they only look at raising as the time spent for parents to have time to spend with their children, and they leave out the nitty-gritties that entail raising. We think they miss out on that concept. One other concept we think should not miss of this debate is the concept of change and the nature and the adaptive nature of children, that the children are actually at the tender age where they can take it, right? And it is at this point where they are going to listen to their parents or try to buy the ideas of their parents. And at this point, we can always a child can always learn from their parent and decide whether or not to buy or not. But we think at the end of it all, when we concentrate on basically the actor, then now we're going to dwell in so much in what we think is the interest of the parent and how we think it is the best case in tonight's debate. Granted?
Don't you think that teaching a child how to language serves in the best interest of the parent?
Right, we'll examine that in a few minutes. So I'm going to do only three things. One, why is it, what is an immigrant parent in the first place? We think, first of all, we have to consider the conditions for migration, right? And I'm going to take you to a situation where we have conflicts, pandemics, diseases, or where people are actually escaping for the idea of finding comfort, or because the previous places where they are escaping from, they are not finding the comfort that they want to be in, right? And then we are going to also look at a place where people are only fleeing, or just, like change of location as a matter of accountability and flexibility. Then we also are going to identify what we think are the best interests of A, just a parent, and B, a parent who is immigrant, right? And the situation that I've actually described to you shows you that the parent is in some sort of desperate situation, right? That the parent desperately wants their child to learn something, perhaps not to make sure that the children are not haunted by the same demons that haunted their parents. Then we also think that at this point we are going to, we think that the idea of exclusivity in this debate has been left out by the team arguing in proposition. Because they tell us that children are going to be free to learn from their parents for a given period of time. But then at a certain point, they are not going to. They are going to be free to, in one way or another, go and learn other things. And we think that is not exclusivity, because we think exclusivity is not just predominantly learning that they are going to learn their minority language more and maybe less of other languages. We think exclusivity means that they are going to learn their native language, that and only that. And we think that is very dangerous. So we are going to go ahead and first discuss what we think is the best interest of the parent and how we think actually this impacts the child in society, right? So we think at the end of it all, furthermore, our second and third speaker are going to be principally justifying why we think these are necessary in the debate, and then I'll be telling you more why we think it is dangerous to not have them exist. First, we see an idea of being exposed, being flexible, boosting your confidence, deepening your connection to other cultures, and feeding your brain, as well as seeing the world. So we do not divert from the point that, these people who are only having one language, whom I would like to refer to as monolingual peers of these children, they could be at the same advantage of, as well seeing the world, or as well being flexible. But we think the idea of change and embracing change is the point of inclusivity. And since both teams are arguing and embracing culture and language, we think at the point of inclusivity and the point that draws us closer as the point where we all want to see unison or a certain sort of consensus in the way people do things or people relate in society. We think the idea of inclusivity rather is key in today's debate. So at the point, so we're going to be analyzing only two benefits. One, the cultural diversity, and the idea of inclusivity that incorporates the ability to adapt and not be rigid, right? So we think that the idea that the parents should only teach their child the only language that the grandfathers or great-grandparents only used to speak, we think it is rather objective, and it is not good for a child's growth. And at the end of it all, we think when there is cultural diversity, at the end of it all, this child is going to be flexible to move from place to place. It is true that these people, the people that are monolingual, could actually as well go from place to place, but at the end of it all, we don't think they're going to be as interactive as these people that have learned many languages. We've seen from statistics that actually people who know more than one language have established some level of confidence. And we also think that even at the point of advancing your career, you would have a better advantage over that person who is monolingual, because you have better skills of communication, or you even have better skills of getting and connecting to society. And at the point where we go fight for culture, understanding that the principles of culture incorporate unison and people trying to, some people come together, we think at that point then it is very key to put in consideration that we have to, at the end of it all, consider being inclusive, flexible, and less rigid. So what has been my speech in a nutshell? I think my speech has had only two aspects. One, why it is very important that parents should teach and encourage their children to not learn one language, but also two, why the principles of the parent being the best actor in this debate serves the best interest of their children. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that speech, first opposition speaker. Let's have the second group speaker to extend their case. Here.
In this day and age, we think children aren't given the time to learn about their respective culture. And for example, immigrant Africans in the USA, where the children may be visiting or move back to their home country, not knowing anything about their language. But before that, let's go to what psycho-opposition argues. First of all, they talk about how they think that the debate is about raising a child in one language only, and therefore they will not be able to assimilate. But notice that in this debate, it clarifies that we are raising a child, meaning that in the event that they go to school in foreign countries, right, the children can be able to learn. And another thing, what we stand aside the position is a kind of is a kind of a sense that a parent, you're only allowed to speak as that kind of language in a household or in a home, but when you move out, you can speak your other languages. That is how we're going to go. But then it kind of goes the whole argument to diversity when they think that, when children don't learn their minority language exclusively, there's going to be, more diversity. But I don't get how not learning language promotes diversity. And even they talk about how people with more than one language have more confidence. But what I feel like that culture is because you don't want people to learn one language, right? To learn their own language, but rather looking towards them learning the country in that foreign country, which I'll explain how this is different. So, moving on to this debate, why would a parent think that it's important for their children to learn their minority language exclusively? Or why do we think it's in the best interest of a parent for their children to learn that language? We believe that in this debate, the main issue isn't the outcome of a particular decision, but we'll also get into that. I think that the main issue is about the parents and the incentives they have. We think that in this particular debate, we believe that the parent is working towards what they think will be the best choice or decision for their child. And firstly, we think that is important because we live in new environments, right? The only favorable source of learning about their culture and language is the parent. It is important because a culture is a form of identity, right? And it gives people a sense of belonging, as compared to a world where you are confused, or you are restricted, or you don't really have that source of the language or the culture from a foreign country, right? We feel like you kind of don't feel you feel out of place, right? As a student in a country that obviously you're going to look different from those foreigners. But then also you feel out of place because you also don't know where exactly you come from. So you're kind of in that state of limbo of do I belong here or I don't belong here, and that is also harmful. But we also think that it creates a cultural diversity in societies. We think that people can interpret other languages on a subconscious level, which we believe is important because they kind of promote unity. What do I mean? Creating societies of acceptance and understanding of one's different culture, differences. We think that assimilating is also possible on our side because a child has a better understanding of where he is or where he comes from. But also learning to accept and understand how different they are from the world. We think it is important because it creates an educated mindset or perception for the child on the different ideologies of cultures and systems. We think that at the end of the day, it boils down to the parents and the incentives they have to look out for the best interest of the children. But secondly, we think that they're the best actors. Why? Because one, they understand and are preparing with the language, and at a certain point in time, because of certain point in time, they live in that particular country. But secondly, we think that the parent-child relationship plays a big part in making a language easy to learn. I like to say I'll be more comfortable to learn from a parent than I would be from an app or from school. For example, when you're learning French in a school, it will be harder than when other one is. It will be harder than when I learn with them. But also, thirdly, we think that languages are necessary to assimilate and can be taught. We think that other languages can be taught in schools. This looks like when you move to foreign countries, there are other ways to access different languages, which also makes assimilation easier. But look at what the child is ashamed, right? And disregarded because his parents, his relatives, his very own cousins speak, let's say, for example, Swahili, right? And you only understand English. You find that children is left out of the family and the kind of feeling of belonging, right? And you feel that this is significantly harmful because they feel out of place and they feel like they necessarily don't have that sense of identity as a child. We think that as you become, we also think that in a scenario like as you become older, right? The reason in this debate is that you are raising a child, right? So we think that as you become older or you're an older person learning your native language, it becomes harmful because we believe that it's important that children are raised with languages because it's easier from a younger stage to learn a language than when you're older. So, for self-position, so what do we actually provide in this debate? We talk about how it is important, to raise a child in an exclusive minority language. A world where parents are teaching the language at home, making sure children speak only that language.
So, do you seem to suggest that children should only dwell in one culture and not learn any other?
I think you should listen. I'm talking about when you move into a foreign country, right? We are teaching a child to learn their culture, right? Their language in their homes. But as they move out, I think it's a bit difficult for a child even within the society, and I think it's a bit difficult not to learn because all around you, the language is being spoken in schools, in hospitals, everywhere. The language is being spoken, and you will be able to learn. So it's basically becoming bilingual at once. You are learning a language at home, but you also learning a language in other places. And also to the parents, right? The parent relationship. Outside of this, we come and talk about how the language can also be taught in school. For example, the reviews who learn French in school. But we think that there's no relationship. There's no relationship there that would encourage a child to embrace the language as as an individual, as a person who belongs from Rwanda, as a person who migrated because of certain circumstances, as a person who grew up in society where they not necessarily embrace that culture, but as a person who learns it, you're able to integrate to promote a sense of unity in a community. You're able to create a society where people understand one another, given their cultural backgrounds or differences or diversities. But then also moving on, we talk about how it is important for the parent to take responsibility, right? To take responsibility of that child. And this is both of my prof have clarified the importance of a parent to look after the best interest. And I feel like that position we need to discuss because one, we look at what the child face in a society where the child doesn't learn their language. For example, looking at your place, feeling like they don't basically belong in a certain area. For example, a child from Africa moving to Africa. You see, so in this debate, we talk about how it is important to promote a sort of diversity. As we see that side opposition has not clearly identified. But let me show you how it is crucial for a child to, as I talk about that people learn more, becoming bilingual, gain more confidence. But I find that learning, becoming bilingual is more acceptable on our side of the case. So when you ask them a POI of them thinking that their child, the language sounds the best interest, we show you how that is important, which wasn't even correctly addressed. So the concept of raising and advising a parent, as I talk about, does not only stop there. It's about encouraging them, integrating them in their cultures and their languages so that they can live a peaceful and harmonious life. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that speed second proposition. Speaker, let's have a second for the speaker to extend their case. Here.
Okay, this house has an immigrant parent who raise their child exclusively in their own minority language. Chair, what we need to understand from side proposition is whether this debate is about who should actually teach this child this particular language, because that is what actually has been presented by their second speaker. Because they come and tell us that it is only the parent who should do that because of that kind of relationship that exists. But then it gets us back to actually what the debate is ideal about. You look at the concept of exclusivity versus the concept of rising. This is something they do not address. Only that the second speaker talks about it as she concludes. They tell us that rising in itself simply means encouraging a child of what to do, about what to talk about, whatsoever. But then getting back to the concept of exclusivity means you completely limit them to a certain thing, right? That is what we then tell you, or come define aside oppositions that they do not go against. So that gives us the question of, ladies and gentlemen, what if this parent is from a country like maybe Iraq that actually hates on people like Americans, and these people actually migrants to a country like America? That means they're going to raise this child to have a rigid mindset to actually hate on Americans. Understand that actually language is the basis of culture, which they concede to. That means the parent is going to raise a child to then question these particular Americans, whatever way they find Americans may be rigid or whatsoever. That is why we tell you that this is very dangerous. Exclusivity in this case is something they do not have in mind today. But secondly, they come and actually debate a debate that actually excludes a child or a parent for the interests of children and parents. They come and talk about culture. We do not underscore the importance of culture. Actually, put culture into consideration. Yes, it is important. But the biggest question then becomes, do we only raise a child as a parent to only raise a child exclusively in our own minority language? That is a question, then side opposition questions. That is a question that has not been addressed. But they tell us, talk about cultures, talk about whatever they talk about integration of languages. That actually does not achieve the utility one from side opposition. But rather side opposition actually comes and questions the model they actually present. But rather what we tell you, we tell you that the concept of rising in itself does not only look at the time the parent spends with the child, but also looks at the advising, the encouragement, and that kind of nurturing. That environment you create as a parent, you only integrate the cultures of your own cultures into this child, or you allow your child to actually be this child who is actually flexible to get to interact with other particular cultures. That is something that we question rest on. That is something that we question that they do not put into consideration. They tell us the reasons as to why they support such a cause is because parents understand the language whatsoever. We do not disagree with that. Parents understand the language, but is that what we want to listen to? You need to give us reasons as to why the parents, you need to give us reasons for this matter or for the best interest of the parents, why the parents should exclusively do that, not actually allow the child to become a bit flexible. Yes.
Does your case scenario suggest that when a parent goes further and teaches his child the language, then it limits them from learning other languages?
For purposes of this debate, exclusivity then limits parents actually teaching children to get interact with other languages. So Chair, what we then talk about as side opposition is look at two things. One, what is the best interest of a parent? The parent's best interest is actually to see a child happy and to see their children become prosperous. So how is this important, or how does this come to play? This is only going to be possible if one, parents allow their children to interact with other societies, because we live in societies that change, or we live to embrace change. That is something that we present as side opposition. Why? Because we think for societies that, for instance, people become migrants to countries like the United States and these people from Iraq, these people actually have a lot of clashes between them. So when you embed cultures that only look at anything at Americans as Iraq or people from Iraq, that then becomes problematic. That is something that we present to you here. But still, we go ahead and rest. We go ahead and look at the concept of actually cultural diversity. We tell you that it is important to let a child have that kind of flexible mindset, to let a child interact with the society, which is something we talk about, that they should let the child interact with society. But then the concept of exclusivity, actually, that means they only work against their case. When you look at the concept of exclusivity, that is something they do not consider. Yes.
Does your case entirely mean that if they teach you a language, then entirely they've told you?
As we have actually agreed that a language is the basis of cultures, we look at what cultures look like. That is something we agree on as both teams. That a language is the basis of culture, or the basement of culture, and the basic unit of culture. So we think at that particular point, parents are actually going to implant their cultures into these particular children, of which these cultures at points are rigid, and we find that problematic. That is something we raise as side opposition. And we actually tell you that in that instance, it is okay to learn a particular language, but it should not be exclusively that particular language. And when you get to the concept of rising, we show you what rising looks like, and actually we show you that with the encouraging, with the advising, then rising then becomes problematic on their side of the house, since their rising looks at only the time the child spends with the parents, and they don't entirely tell us what happens during that time. But also, pardon, they come and ask what we propose like a side opposition. We actually think, one, we should do things that are actually in the best interest of children. One, we look at the nature of the child. Who is this child they're talking about? This is a child who's actually at an age that actually embraces change, at an age that actually is going to embrace the change of different cultures, different things, and at the point where we only exclusively want to limit them to particular things, then that becomes problematic. How? We think these are the children who are actually going to be sent into society and actually are going to look at new interesting things maybe you have in cultures. They will not want to go much into that. For instance, if this child is a Musoga, they actually want to embed the circumcision kind of culture into them, and they're actually living in a society that is actually involved in a way, and they want to embrace such a culture, then it is going to become a problem of learning. That is something we find very important. And that is why we tell you that we should have a mindset that is flexible, or we give these children room for flexibility, because at the end of the day, by their nature as children, they have that capacity, or they're in that stage where they actually get interested about things of their interest, not cultures. Understand that we do not underscore the importance of culture, but our question is the exclusivity of raising that particular child. But secondly, we come and look at the benefits of this to one, the child and the parent. We think that for immigrants, there are possibilities of these people, one, becoming citizens of those particular nations they get to, or secondly, getting back to their home country. That is why we tell you that then we do not underscore the importance of culture, but what we actually question is the exclusivity. So in instances where these people become natives, we find other languages important, or interaction with other cultures important. That is why we then tell you the concept of exclusivity defies the place. But then secondly, we come and look at the what if analysis. We look at instances where the cultures of those particular natives, those particular nations contradict to your personal cultures, then that becomes problematic because it creates room for conflicts, which we think aside government is something we need to consider in this case. For that, I beg the rest.
All right, thank you for that speech. Thank you for that speech, second opposition speaker. Let's have the platform speaker to extend their case here.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, in a world whereby there is rise of globalization, we prefer a world whereby these parents teach their kids their language through raising them. Now, panel, before I go into this debate, a bit of clarity. Yes, we do understand that the debate says exclusivity, but the exclusivity we're talking about is exclusivity at home, i.e. raising a child. A parent is not going to raise a child from school, from his office, from what a parent is going to raise a child from home. This entirely means that, and also note that at the moment, most kids spend most of their time at school. You come for holidays, you go back to school. This entirely means that at home, you will go home, they will beat you in they will teach you, they'll tell you to do this in Minyakole or Lusoga, in whichever language, and then when you go back to school, you're in position to learn English, any sort of languages. So when they come and claim how on our side of the house there's no inclusivity, it doesn't stand in this debate because at the end of the day, these kids are going to necessarily learn other languages from elsewhere, right? But even secondly, before I go to the major classes, we got an ideology how if this parent is from Iraq and has a mindset of, let's say, hatred towards Americans, he's most likely going to raise a child. So, from their understanding, hating Americans is a type of language, which is entirely they will come and teach us. We feel like what they're entirely debating is culture. This debate is not talking about culture as a whole. Even when they come and say languages are basics, yes, language is like spoken word. Language is not a mindset. I.e., on their side of the house, it still happens. If I am an Iraq parent and I still hate America, whether I do not raise you in my native language, I will still make you hate America. So even the idea of circumcision, all that stuff, all their sort of other culture-like things, it completely falls out of this debate. But if they want to have that debate outside here. But then even secondly, we come and tell you how even their concept, they come and I think they really base this argument on the concept of rising and nurturing. Kind of understand that yes, culture, this language promotes this sort of identity. We come and tell you how they don't show us a link between language and mindset. I.e., if let's say if I hate Americans, the way I speak to you is going to make me hate Americans, right? I.e., when you speak Lusoga, it entirely means that you start hating Americans. There is no sort of thing, but then it completely falls out of this debate. First clash, who promotes inclusivity, right? We do agree that inclusivity is good, right? We do agree inclusivity is good and how they're going to promote flexibility, cultural diversity. They come and tell us how they want to interact more because they don't have many languages. And it's going to promote confidence. We don't know which sort of confidence. But anyway, we come and tell you how firstly, on our side of the house, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no sort of language like flexibility, you could still have it. But even secondly, note that when I started my speech, I told you that there's an increasing sort of globalization. When you're an immigrant, you're most likely going to want to fit in. I.e., this looks like if you're a kid and you go to school and like everyone else is like, let's say like English is like a jam or like French, what you come to speak so that makes you look weird. So at the end of the day, you're going to disregard your language and want to fit into society. What our side does, if at home you necessarily speak, if at home they necessarily teach you Lusoga, because at school, if you're an immigrant, like your culture is like when you immigrate into your country, there's like a less likelihood of like your culture being there. So the parents then have like an obligation to teach you. They will teach you from school something that you would not learn at home. At the end of the day, you have some extra knowledge of your actual language, right? Because where you are right now, you're not in a position to do so. That is why we live in the clash of inclusivity. But even secondly, right? And we also got like this weird analogy from first week. They come and tell us how an immigrant parent could be a refugee and they will not want, and then they want them to fit into society and not to be tormented. What they try to insinuate that when you teach, if you're like a refugee, and then you teach, like a parent teaches their kids their language, they're going to be tormented. We don't necessarily know how that happens. But kind of, on a comparative, we came and told you how language creates a better bond, which until this day was not true. But kind of, we also come and tell you that in a scenario whereby you're an immigrant and you're in position to go back and you don't know your language, you're not going to fit in, and how society is going to look at you, right? Society then is most likely going to condemn your parents. What? You mean you just travel to America and nothing you? You travel to America and you come back and like you're disregarding their language, you're disregarding like your culture or like your background. Society then is going to condemn the parent, and the parent at that point would have failed his role in raising the kid.
Is helping a child understand who they are and where they come from part of rising?
Yeah, it is part of rising, but then we're talking about language necessarily. If that's the case, they want to bring, even in a world whereby you don't necessarily have this sort of exclusive language, whatever you're going to bring would still happen. They need to come and prove to us, which is like, feel like it's a bit too late out. When you raise this child in your own language, you won't raise them in a specific sort of way. Second, clash in this debate, right? Which side of the house is in the best interest of the child, right? I've already come and told you what they come and claim in this debate, how they'll be, what they come and tell us on their side of the house. This child is going to have like many languages. This child is going to be like inclusive, and then on a comparative, we came and showed you how number one, this child is just raised by the parent, and they're raised in this sort of language. We don't necessarily remove the aspect of inclusivity. What do we come and show you in this debate? Number one, we show you why the parent is like the sort of best actor in doing so, right? When they come and tell us first of all, it's important to understand the parent is like the main actor in this debate. That entirely means that if they want to reach a point of diversity, it then means that this parent is in position to teach their kids these many languages, i.e. not only their native languages, but like Lusoga, Runyakole, all those many languages. Current status quo, your parents most likely know 2 languages, unless otherwise, right? We're looking at a scenario whereby what they were supposed to come and show is how your parents is in the best position to teach you all these other languages, right? That is entirely impossible, and their side of the house falls out of this debate. On a comparative, we come and show you how, number one, they have not even shown us why it's necessary, but i.e. Removing the aspect of the mindset, me teaching you to grow up knowing Runyakole, or me teaching you growing up to know in Lusoga, raising you with the language of Lusoga is entirely bad. All 2 speeches, they have not necessarily shown us why that is bad. Rather, they come and create the whole debate, their own debate on necessarily the whole culture as a whole, right? At the end of the day, what have I told you? The thing I've told you is language does not necessarily influence mindset. Secondly, which still stands in this debate, how at the end of the day, this child needs something to identify them, given that they're going in a space whereby they need something to be proud of.
All right, thank you for that speech, Pat Bro. Let's give that hope to extend that. Yes, yeah.
I start my speech. 3, 2, 1. Child. It's the child's right to learn a majority language because he is a citizen of that country by birth. But before I go any further, allow me to do a little bit of rebuttal. First and foremost, he said that the team, what we got from this team was, it is in the interest of the child to learn his cultural language. What we say is that we are promoting inclusivity, whereby the child can learn his cultural language, but on top of learning his cultural language, the mother has to also teach him the language of the majority country. So in this case, the interest of the child would be catered for in this part of the debate. So in our side, we believe we are catering for the basis of the interest of the child better than they're catering for the interest of the child. One of the analogies the first speaker said was a person would be that the Waganda that he got a clip of the Waganda singing the Waganda anthem in the UK. Most importantly, why this is important is that the only reason they're living in the UK is because their parents were able to teach them English. So they learned English and they also learned their local language. What we're saying is that we are not trying to eradicate the local language. We are teaching both their language. So in UK, those parents that are in UK found themselves learning their local language, the children learning both the local language and their normal language. Most importantly, they said that they will be connecting with family at a point when they go back home. Sure, we are not limiting them from learning their local language. No, they can learn their local language, but importantly, they can also learn another language. What they don't understand is the principle of exclusivity. The principle of exclusivity clearly states that is the only language to be said. When we go back home, we are going to speak this language, and that is the main language at home. And the child spends most of his time when he's a child at home. So when he goes to school, you clearly find it hard to interact. And as they were saying that the child spends most of his time at school. But when we look at an example of Canada where it is a law whereby the child spends equal time at school and equal time at home, that means that when he's at home, he's learning a different language, and when he goes back at school, he's learning a different language. So at this point, this really rules out this argument. And they also didn't understand what the principle of exclusivity clearly stands for. The principle of exclusivity clearly states that it is the only language to be taught. So the only thing that is stated is that they are going to teach this language. So Chair, one thing I'll take you later. One thing the second speaker comes here and tells us is that she gave us an analogy that one can learn a language if they are young, better and easily. So if one can learn a language if they are young, better and easily, why not teach them both their languages, the culture and also the language of that majority country? So this clearly plays from our side. I'll take you later. We are going to learn, if a child can learn both those languages when he's young, she is going to learn them easily. So this plays the analogy better at our side. And what they don't understand most importantly is the principle of minority. When you're minority, you're in a confiscated group or you're a little country as compared. So most importantly, when you are interacting with the world, it is less obvious to interact with people because you are the minority people. So this is what clearly this team was bringing for us, team affirmative. So back to our case, what were we saying? We said, why is it important to teach a child the language inclusive of his minority and majority? One, it boosts language diversity. Two, it eases communication. That means that when he's communicating with different people, it will ease the level of communication. And most importantly, we say that it would be better, that one would better understand the community he or she is living in. But most importantly, what did we say? We said, how does it benefit the two stakeholders in the debate? One, the actor. The actor is the immigrant parent. One, the migrant parent. The child gets to have easy communication skills and interactive skills, which is better from our world. From our world, when a child has a better interaction and communication skills, that means he knows the language of his culture native. On top of that, he knows the language of the country he or she lives in. Most importantly, the child gets to have culture diversity. What they don't see is that language and culture are clearly related. So if you teach a child only one language, they will go to learn that language and that culture. But that is what we are bringing you articulated. So Chair, on the next stakeholder is the child. How does the child benefit? The child has the highest beneficiary rate. One, he gets to learn very many languages. Two, he gets a cultural diversity that is clearly good since it is very important to know very many cultures. And two, it limits the level of rigidness that stands more at their side than it stands at our side. And the child gets to interact with his or her friends easily and allows flexibility. But most importantly, why is it important to have a diverse level of communication skills? It is important to have a diverse level of communication skills because you can talk to very many people and it is easy to interact with very many people. That side, they say that they will cater for the interaction of having diverse communication skills, but it is way harder because a child will know the exclusive language. For example, in Canada, where you spend most of the time home, then part of the time at school, you will find it very hard to learn the other language. Yet in Canada, they learn English mostly. Most importantly, it brings about flexibility, which is the most important part of this. Which is the most important? And most importantly, why is cultural diversity also important to a child? When a child knows very many different cultures, it caters for the child can live in the two different countries easily. As they say that the child could go back home and learn and live in the society better. We believe on our side we cater for it better because he can live in the majority society better, even in the minority society better. So we believe that the cultural diversity is something we cater for in this debate. And most importantly, why is it important to ease the level of interaction for a child? If a child finds himself learning one exclusive language at home, for example in Canada, he will find it very hard. For example, in Canada, he will clearly find it very hard to interact with other people, which in itself is not something we'll take out of real life.
Yeah.
It's
Chair, I'll continue.
Wait,
Chair,
is it easier for
how
a child
does
to
an
learn another language to learn?
How does an actor benefit more as well? How does the actor, mostly the parent, benefit more from this part of it, from our side, than he benefits more from their side? Child one, the parent gets to see whereby the child can live both in their world and this world easily. Two, the child will learn both their cultural language and their language and the majority country's language more. And this will find himself having a better diversification, and the child will be able to live in a better life. So on the level of comparison between our world caters for more diversification than their world caters for the diversification. We cater for more culture. When it comes to cultural heritage, we cater for cultural heritage equally. So we believe in their clash. And most importantly, they forget the concept of raising a child. They forget the concept of raising a child as a parent. The concept of raising a child is if you teach a child one language, he will clearly grow up knowing that that is the language he must learn. And if he grows up learning that language, that promotes a level of rigidness, which clearly they don't cater for. They do not understand the concept of raising a child. But most importantly, why is it justified to teach a child a language in the majority country? One, it is interaction, communication skills, and cultural diversification. From our side, you get a better world of diversification. From our side, you get a better world of diversification, interaction, and a better world of diversification, interaction, and a better world of encouragement. From our world, we see if a child knows both the majority language and the minority language, he is likely to live better than knowing mostly the minority language.
Thank you for that speech. Hey, that's how the open blind close their case.
So we think the debate has revolved around the idea of language and culture, right? But then we think that the case that Team Prop chooses to discuss is not what ideally we should have had, right? Because, they sort of are discussing and bringing out explicitly that the questions of why parents should teach their children a certain language, and B, why at home exclusively, right? Which we think was not the basic question in the debate, and at that they stand no chances of winning the debate. We think the debate should have rather been about whether or not parents, and in this case, migrant parents, should raise their children exclusively in their native language, right? And then there comes in the definition clash on what we think exclusivity is. Because Team Prop thinks exclusivity is like a parent raising their children, whereby raising is spending time with your parents, and then whatsoever you're not a child, maybe when they say it is hard to learn and all, when you're an adult, perhaps you can be free to go out there and learn. First of all, they themselves concur to the fact that it will be hard because we all know you cannot teach a non-dog new tricks. But also we think at that point that the people have outgrown the idea of learning. But then to the basic clash of the debate, which brings me to the what if analysis that surfaced in our second speech, independent and independent variable. That the existence of language is largely dependent on the existence of culture. They were saying that hating America to Iraq could not be a language, but we think at the point where I are actually told to hate them in that regard, then you wouldn't even want to speak their language or even identify with them. And we think the idea of not wanting to like them or perhaps hating them has nothing to do with language and culture. In that case, we think they run a moot and irrelevant. Thus, debate. And at the end of it all, after 24 minutes of their material, we do not get any satisfactory reason as to why parents should exclusively make sure their children learn no language, right? And we also think that at a point where they so much rely on why parents should teach, then we think they lose the concept. Because the concept of change as an embracing change in society largely depends on inclusivity. Then we also got ideas like unity and people, wanting to dwell together and wanting to produce the same effect, or the idea of agreeing to disagree, that people would want to live with different ideologies in contemporary society. We think this one is actually brought out if people are inclusive and left to adapt, and this is possible when people are not only exclusive to one language, like we told you, that is objective in nature and perhaps not a good way to raise your child. And because this is an actor resolution, not like they identify actor resolutions, that's why we are going to identify who is the best actor. According to rules of engagement, we think that is not what the debate is. Actor resolutions are supposed to dwell in the best interest of the actor. We are not saying parents are not the best actors. We are not saying the home is not the best is not the best place. Rather, we are saying, is it in the best interest of an immigrant parent that their children should learn many languages, or that their children should only live to know their native language? Then we also think that the assertion that the only way a child can learn the culture and the language is from their parent, which they brought in by their trying to bring out explicitly that the parent is the best actor. We think that was first of all irrelevant, because the debate is not about proving whether or not the parent is an actor. But then we also think it is not the only way a child can learn cultures, because then themselves concur that at a certain point people can be left out and people can be free to go out to the open space and have the right to get to learn other languages. So in a debate whether or not parents should teach their children native languages, or should let them free and raise them to embrace change and become flexible, we think at the end of it all, like I said, we are going to analyze on which house has the best outcome. We think at the end of it all, it is in the best interest of the parent to see their child flourish, or to see their child go well. But we also think it is very good that the child will learn to become flexible and adapt to the environment, and thus become a better citizen.
Thank you for that speech of reply. Let's have the proposition reply to close their case and end the debate. Here.
In agreeing to panel, I entirely think that team opposition in this whole debate failed to understand what we presented to them, and it is very funny how we decide to have such arguments from them. Panel, these people have at this point failed to understand what language is in their case. Second, culture. I'm going to make light of this of how the debate was actually run. First of all, in line with culture and language, we told these people that language is a contributing factor to culture. Then they came up with assumptions that if I told my child the language, that means I would teach them maybe hatred, which assumed like hatred is a language in their world. Second part, what do we also get from their world? They say the parent has the best interest or would see a better child if it is them promoting what they would want. What do we actually show you? We told you these are the parents, the people that have that obligation to actually provide the best to the child. We told you that in this situation, being an immigrant parent, it is the parent that actually has the best or the better version of what this child is actually supposed to learn. We also take you light in a future perspective of when this child actually returns to their society. They make a confusion trying to paint out a picture that society would not buy, like society would see them in a different way. We told you that if these people went back, found their relatives, how would they associate? We provide to you the better inclusivity that they were calling for. Because I think at some point they reached the point they started debating for us, because everything they were providing is what we told you initially in all our speeches. We told you the racism. You cannot tackle racism without talking about the exclusivity. We gave you a better description of the racism. They actually had to ask questions of what it looks like to raise a child. In this perspective, or for the purposes of this debate, we told you in line with language. I do not understand how they expect a child to be raised up without the advice from a parent. Perhaps, if it is also grown, in which language should it come? We told you in their minority language. So entirely your advice and parenthood duties exist in our world, but in their language. I think that's one thing they also fail to understand. So, we see all this to understanding who has a better world or who provides what is practical. These people entirely depend on assumptions, providing to the house things that look like reality, but when they are really not practical. Examples that were running from their side were entirely not proper. I should say, the same team that came and said that a child is actually open to learning, in their third speech, they say, no, when this child learns their mother language, it is hard for them to actually learn other languages. Just the contradiction in their case, as it exists. We told you that me being brought up when I know Nyangole, it does not mean that right now I do not know how to speak English. That's not a limiting factor. But we are telling you that for purposes of this debate, we really needed to understand and see what is more important. And I entirely think that panel, we provided to you what the better case is, because we considered society, considered the parent, considered the future perspective, and unlike them who provided what looked not like a proper case, but entirely decided to agree with us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that interesting debate. It's an open round, so we're gonna deliberate. But basically, we're gonna take like 5 minutes. Then I will call you back, and then yeah. But shake hands. That was a good round. Am I supposed to end this stream? Someone called Joseph. Hey, let's shake hands out. Let's shake hands.
I think at one point you guys
Okay, I don't think I need to ask you about kids. Let me get to balance. Let's do the balance. Let's have this extra. This extra. You can go now. I told you, don't take an emotion selection. Wait. It's still going on.